Here.
Lisa Hadeen,
Here.
Scott Gergen,
Here.
Stephanie Mullen, here.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
All right, and then discussion. If we want to add anything, the activities fees increase was tabled from the last meeting. And so this is our first time taking something off the table. So as far as, can we make an amendment now to amend the agenda, include the activities fee increase, to add that to an action item?
I so move.
Second.
Okay. Is there any more discussion?
Would this be an appropriate time? I know traditionally we don't, as a board, approve graduation planning, but would this be an appropriate time to move an action item?
We could add it here, or we can bring it up after the graduation discussion to add that as an item at that point.
Either one works.
I would move to add a graduation plan endorsement to the action items.
So first we need to vote on the graduation action item amendment, and then we need to work our way back and vote on the activities fees amendment, and then we can work our way back to approve the agenda with both amendments. Okay. All right, so we'll take a vote on approving the amendment to include the graduation action item to
Was there
discuss.
I might have missed because I was looking down. Was there a second, or did it die for lack of second?
If not, I will second.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Yep.
For clarifying.
Okay, so do we have any discussion on that? Okay, then let's take a vote on the graduation action item. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. So now we'll move on and we will vote on including the activities fee increase in our action items and removing that from the table. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, so last up is now approving the agenda with the two amendments so that the agenda will now include the activities fee increase action item as well as the graduation action item. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Ooh, I think that's the most complicated one we've had. All right. So next up is an approval of the minutes from the April 22nd regular board meeting. Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Superintendent memo.
All right, so I will go through some good news items here. And despite of all the challenges, there's certainly some amazing things going on. We want to note that Governor Walz declared May 7th as School Age Care Workers Day. And this is an excellent opportunity, or was an excellent opportunity, to recognize the amazing job that various Hastings Public School staff members have done in providing care for the children of emergency workers since March 23rd. Over 100 families have been served in a safe environment, and in the past week, we've been averaging close to 50 actually participating each day. Also, a great time to note that our HPS food service staff has consistently been averaging about 4,500 meals per day, prepared and delivered, also since March 23rd. Their work conditions and expectation have changed dramatically, yet they have consistently been amazing in providing structure and food security throughout the district. Hastings Bus Company has served admirably as their delivery partner. And finally, more recently, the High School Drama Club displayed their resilience and ingenuity by presenting The Pirates of Penzance on May 14th entirely through a remote video platform. More proof that the show must go on, and I enjoyed tuning in to watch that production. So Like I said, the show goes on. And that is the announcements and recognitions that I have for this meeting.
Thank you. And I just want to go back and make sure that we acknowledge and recognize everyone who is watching this from home as though you were visiting us at a regular school board meeting. And we do have a number of people signed in tonight as well. And so thank you for coming here and being a part of the discussions that we have coming up. And as always, feel free to reach out to us with any questions. All right, so we will move into our discussion items. First is discussion around the official district postings since the Hastings Star Gazette is no longer printing.
So just a follow-up from our work session, we talked about the situation of getting those required legal postings out, and the decision was made to have administration go ahead and have those things posted in the Pioneer Press because it met all the legal requirements, and that we would continue the conversation. We'd explore the evolution of the Hastings Journal and whether their subscription rate would meet the legal requirements. We looked at what South Washington shared with us regarding adopting the Pioneer Press long-term, designating them as their official publication of record. And we had a comparison of what our rates were before. So we got that information out to you. We've included some of it here in Board Book to be a little bit more transparent. So right now, we just want to move as quickly as reasonably could be expected to designate a new publication for our legal postings, but we don't have a specific deadline because our designation kind of got fell out from under us. And so we just need to keep it moving, but we don't have to make any decision today. So that's why it's a discussion item.
Okay, Lisa?
This was a curiosity question, and I see it's not in Board Book anymore, but the link to what we were paying for Star Gazette to my eyes was blank. I don't know if that was a technology thing on my side. I'm just curious what we were paying in the past. I see that both the Pioneer Press and the proposed journal are close within 25 cents an inch. So that's a curiosity question. If Becky knows that, Becky Garcia knows that, know it. If not, fine.
Give me one moment and I can tell you what it is.
Thank you.
I think we did have it posted in maybe it.
Well, it showed up as blank when I opened it,
Yeah.
and so I'm not sure what happened. Again, that
Board
we do
Book
have the
didn't like
information.
it.
okay, the way it was linked.
Board Book did not like that particular attachment. So
That file. Okay.
And Jeff, what was the requirement, the state statute, something about we need to have a paper that at least blankets the district and with a minimum of 400? Is that right?
Has a primary or secondary office in the district with 400 subscriptions.
Okay. So, obviously, wherever we're at with the second issue of this journal process, but maybe it's advisable to say, okay, let's throw an RFP out there and see where they're at. I know the St. Paul paper covers that number, but maybe that in a week or two that they will have secured that much. I don't know.
Yes, an RFP would put the impetus on them to verify or to prove that they can meet our requirements, and obviously we'd have the legal requirement would be the specs on our RFP.
I just, the things that need to get done, probably we just go to the St. Paul paper, but, looking in the process and saying if they succeed, then, we should probably throw out an RFP and see where they're at. And, who knows, maybe the St. Paul paper would give us a discounted price over what they gave over in South Wash. I don't know.
Point out that the price that the Pioneer Press gave to South Wash is less than the journal's rate by a smidge, 25 cents an inch. I want to say the same thing I said at the work session about if we're not time constrained, like if this doesn't have to happen this month, I'd like to stay with this Pioneer Press. Let's go to Pioneer Press. We know they can meet our compliance. It feels like it's probably in the range of price. And then maybe at the end of summer, let's let the journal prove that they can compete. I think it's an unfair question. Thank you, Becky. I think that's an unfair question to ask them right now.
It popped
So-
up here.
Yep, so this is the information that we have as far as prices go. And this comes directly from the proofs that we would get from the Hastings Gazette. So $25 an inch. Now, I received an email from John at the Hastings Journal. And today he just sent me an email letting me know that he's hoping that they should be able to meet that magic number of 400 by next month. So his phones are ringing off the hook for him. So
Well, I guess, I kind of agree with what Lisa's saying. The things that need to go ahead, we just work with the St. Paul paper and see where the fall comes and put an RFP out at that time and see what happens.
I agree. Let's give them some time to get their feet under them, to get their numbers up, and then we're not setting them up to not meet it. He's hopeful to have it by the end of next month. Let's give him a little bit more time. Make sure we're there.
Would encourage you to keep it as a discussion item so you don't lose track of it, but that doesn't mean you have to discuss it every meeting. You just know it's there, and you can come back to it when you feel like you're ready.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this? And we'll move on. Next up is summer community food security update.
So we should have Jen Subert and Brittany Hirschbauer available to follow up on questions that were asked at the work session, and turned out that they were very timely questions because there has been some changes in summer offerings throughout the community. Obviously, we're in interesting times, so some interesting changes have happened as far as what's available in the summer, and when they're ready, they'll share that with you.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. So I was just going to go over what we've been doing currently. Right now, we are running a summer food service program. We do have waivers in place from the state. We have a non-congregate feeding waiver. We have a parent pickup waiver. Also have a mealtime waiver. Basically what that means is the students don't have to stay on site to eat. Any parent can pick up food for the children. And meal times, we don't have to do it within a certain time frame. Going forward into this summer is we want to continue our summer food program. It'll be a little bit different in that we are trying to get away from the delivery part of it. We're going to go with strictly the cold meals, which is like a sandwich meal option instead of offering the hot food option. Send out the survey to see what the need is for meals. So Jen and I have been working on getting that taken care of. I also want to send out robocalls to families in the district in case there are any families that don't have internet. And then the instructions will be that they can contact Pam or know if they do need service delivered to them. We have been partnering with different organizations in town so that I can serve more families. And then we also want to try to have a varying pickup schedule. So we want to try to have some of the meals served earlier in the day. And then we also want to hit those parents that are going to be coming home from work later on in the afternoon. And that's also one of the survey questions, is what time would work best for the parents to be able to pick up meals. And we're also trying to spread ourselves out so that we can hopefully make it so that none of the kids have to walk too terribly far to get to those meal sites. And one of the things that we're looking at doing is having the families sign up for meals the day before by noon. So that way we know, we can kind of keep our waste count down. We'll know which kids are going to have meals and how many we need to do. Of course, the plans are going to possibly change based on the need and the number of volunteers. We're looking at trying to get volunteers to sit at the sites and hand out meals to the students as they come up.
So Brittany,
So
can you go
my-
back over the partner or the other partners who normally are providing, or I should say partners, other entities within the community who normally provide meals during the summer and what their status is, what you found out their status this summer?
Yes. So normally, there are a couple different places that have been, I guess, in the past providing meals. What we found is there's a couple of different locations now that are serving meals alongside with what we're serving. So restaurants in town, you can go down and you can get a kid's meal, or you can pick up a meal for your student. They're going to be stopping that the 29th of this month. I've talked with Lowe's, and they are not going to be in Hastings this year. I'm not exactly sure why. I'm assuming it's because they have a huge need, or maybe they just don't have funding. I believe they're state funded. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we felt that it was very important to make sure that we're serving any student that we possibly can in our district, because those places are not going to be available this year.
Thank you. Lisa?
So Brittany, thank you for looking into that. Is there a different message around this meal? Would it still be available from 0 to 18 student resident in the district, or resident in the district? And then is it, I don't know, it's more of a food security based as opposed to, not even completely clear what our message was previously, but
Well, the previous message, the way that the state has the message set up is we're an open site, is what we're classified as. And what that means is any child 18 years of age or under can come to our site and they can have a meal. That's basically what it's going to be going forward. But we do want to make sure that we send that message out. We want to really focus more on the kids that are going to have food insecurities. If there's a family that doesn't really need the service, it's not beneficial for them to have it. That's not going to do anything for us, either way you look at it. So we can more of the kids that need to have the meals is what we're looking at right now.
I do have some questions about the lack of food delivery. I do worry, especially since we do have, we're kind of sprawling, and we have a lot of rural communities and things like that as part of our district. The kids who have food insecurity, I really want to make sure that they are able to get the meals. And I don't want getting to the meals to be a barrier for that to happen. And so how are we going to work to make sure all of those kiddos are able to get the meals?
Well, and that's one of the things that we're looking at. That's why we're trying to partner with some of the different community organizations so that we can be spread out as much as possible. What we're trying to get away from is using the bus service, because that's an added expense that we hadn't planned on using. And we don't want to lose money doing the program, but yet we still want to make sure that all the kids can have a meal that need it. And that's where the survey comes in. As long as they're letting us know they're either doing the survey or they're contacting Pam, then that way we know for sure those kids. And that's always going to be, it'll be an option, but we're going to do it more on a case-by-case basis. We just don't want to necessarily throw that out there right away and have all these parents think that we're going to deliver meals to them again all summer long. And we want to try to do, this is kind of a tentative thing until June 30th, and then we'll reevaluate and see if the need is still there and how things are going at that time. And then at that time, we can decide, do we want to continue it through the rest of the summer, or is the need not that strong? Where are we at with it?
So just to follow up on that, we have an option where we've got a waiver to continue all the way through June 30th, no matter what the next set of waivers or circumstances are. So we know that part. We can proceed in with a plan similar to what Brittany's describing through June 30th, and then adjust because we will find out this week what summer programs as far as academic and community services we're going to be running, and if there needs to be a connection with that on meals. And also just we don't want to have a lot of waste, so we want to see how we're dialing it in through that period of June. The other thing about obviously, we had already prepaid or we were contracted, I should say, to use the bus service for transportation through June 5th. And so we used it for food delivery. If we continue to run bus routes, we'll have that added expense and we'll probably have to subsidize food service for continuing to do it that way. And if it's that important, we find it's that important, well, it could be worth the expense. But to try it out, to try to target who needs it most is the first tentative step here. And the pickup or drop off, the sites where they're getting their food can be a wide variety of places. It can be out in Vermillion, it can be in Hampton, it can be, where a church somewhere that's partnering. It's wherever we think we need to have those convenient sites, along with using our own school sites, for hitting specific areas. So those are some of the circumstances and options that went into the preliminary conversation.
Lisa?
So what I hear you say, Jeff, and correct me here, please, Brittany, is our current waivers for non-congregate open parent pickup and waiver from the time of pickup or time of service, those current waivers extend through the 30th of June. So we know that we have that, right? Because we don't actually, under current guidelines, we don't qualify as an open food service, open summer food service district. Our free and reduced lunch isn't that big. So I want to confirm that that's true. So sometime between now and then, should there be a interest in going out into later into summer, we're gonna have to reapply for whatever waivers we might be able to get. Is that correct?
Yeah, the waivers are there. But like you said, we're only about a 22, I think, % free and reduced. So we're not high enough to have a standard regular summer program set up.
Okay. But our current waivers are in place through the 30th. So we know we can at least try this for a few weeks.
Yes, we can do it through the 30th and then we can reevaluate at that time. And then I could go on and I could reapply. The state's being pretty lenient right now. If we do want to continue it, we should be able to reapply at that time and say that we're going to continue it through the rest of summer.
I will say that compared to summer food service, which I know the district has not participated in the past, and which was Loaves and Fishes in community partnership, I think all of those service locations, and maybe there were just 2 or 3 of them, were right in Hastings. So really anything that we can try to move it out, I think is an improvement from past practice.
And how are we reaching families who English may not be their first language to make sure they understand how to fill out the survey and how to request meals?
But in different languages too, if need be.
Yeah, so the surveys that we're doing will need to go out in Spanish at a minimum. Also, if we do a robocall, we might have to language option on there too. If I have had feedback on the distance learning that that some parents are not fully understanding what's kind of being put out there directly to the students and not fully understood by the parents.
Okay, great. Dave?
When is the survey going to go out, Brittany?
Looking at sending out the survey after probably tomorrow sometime. We were waiting to talk with you and figure out kind of if there's anything that we needed to change.
Get the survey out there and work through the other issues and see where they're at and get back to us. But at least we know we're going through the 5th and then, through the end of June and have to reevaluate and maybe reapply if we find there's a need, I guess.
Is there any more discussion on this item? Thank you for working through this and figuring out how to be successful.
Thank you.
Next up is the class of 2020 graduation events. So we did have some discussion about this at our work session, and Mike, if you want to fill us in on anything new.
Well, great. Happy to be here again and moving closer and closer to graduation. And this weather is going to cooperate all the way through all of our events. We really had a great kickoff to some of our senior honors with the banners that went up at Schaefer Field. Again, that was a partnership of donations with Hastings High School staff, our all-night grad party, and it just really just hit a home run, no pun intended, on the baseball fence. But that got people thinking about graduation in a positive way. I believe that in parents that we've been communicating with and I've talked to, they understand that we did not want to make an early decision for the sake of making a decision. We wanted to see what, in fact, the guidance would be and make the best decision for what makes sense for us in Hastings. And given what the guidance said, in what we believe is a school district, which is safety, graduation, traditions, and honoring students, and making sure it's done right, we've come up with a really good plan. So at the work session, we talked about that we have some events that we're honoring seniors. We have their last day of school, which will be a very fun, safe event to exchange items and honor them and have our staff involved with that, again, in a very, very safe manner. And then we have our graduation event, which is more of a rolling processional than, it's certainly not completely virtual. I do have graduation speakers lined up. I know that there'll be other speeches and parts that will be in the video, but on our June 5th, our plan is to have families in one vehicle, no carpooling, because that does not meet social distancing standards. Then we would spread out the last names of the alphabet. So we're having about 90 vehicles each of the hour of 4 hours, we're spreading it out. So again, we're taking the time to recognize, we're not rushing, but we're being safe. And we're really bringing up the May 29th date is when we will get students their caps and gowns, their diplomas, all of their honors and awards. So this plan has really allowed us to really come together. I've sent out a video to senior parents and students late last week. I've certainly been communicating with our staff here, and they've been talking with students about our plan tonight. Kelsey and I did an interview on the KDWA radio with Maureen McNary. In people we've talked to, they've said, we appreciate the plan and we appreciate you trying to make it special for our students. So you do have the documents that are going out in the senior letter that is going out today with the help of the Hastings Post Office, really helping us out, getting that out. We should have a solid plan that's here. But I can't stress enough our commitment to students, safety, and making this something that's meaningful. The processional is not a parade in our sense that we think of parades. And I think we use the guidance from the Department of Education, but this is not something where we are having floats. It's not something we're having motorcycles or tractors. This is a dignified processional done in a safe way to honor students.
Mike, did you put in there somewhere, I'm trying to look it up right now, but didn't we discuss a rain date in case the weather changes?
We sure do. So our rain dates we have for our June 4th and June 5th. And in the senior letter that is sent out, we do have that in the letter. Tomorrow morning after our staff meeting and just some final tweaks, that parent newsletter will have a condensed version of our events for seniors that will also publicize the rain date again of June 4th or June 5th. And for our senior, that drive-through, we're really on a tight window with grades. So if we do have a rain event on May 29th, we wouldn't move it earlier. We would move it to that Monday of the following week, which would be June 1st.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I think you meant
June 4th and
or
June
June
6th are the
6th.
rain dates, correct?
What did I say?
You said
The
5th.
5th, but that's just because it's in your head, the 5th.
That's right, it's in my head, yes. June 4th, June 6th, the Thursday and the Saturday, depending upon the rain in June.
Do we have any other questions about this? Again, I know I've said this to you a lot, but thank you so much for working on this and working to make something special for our students. I know that this isn't what any of us expected. And even up until, a week and a half ago, this is not what we expected for graduation. And we were hoping for something different, but we're making the best of it. And I appreciate all the time you've put into it.
Sure, I appreciate it, and our staff and community appreciate that we're taking the time as an administration and school board really to let's make sure we really sift this out and work through it. So that your support has been very, very important. Also, Chief Schaefer of the Hastings Police, just fantastic support. He wants to support us the right way.
Okay.
Thanks,
Do
Mike.
we- Anything else on this item? Otherwise, once we get into action items, we can put on support for it. Okay. All right. So then next up in our discussions is the district-wide end-of-year events calendar.
So one of the things that was discussed in the work session was that there would be end of the year events. Obviously, the high school is the height of curiosity around the community, but all of the school sites have their traditions for closing. They're all impacted, and they all want to do something that is safe and meaningful to the staff, students, and families. So we promised we'd pull together kind of a calendar of the events that were tentatively planned to happen. Keep in mind, this is tentative. It was done on an Excel document, not chiseled into a stone tablet. So this is as far as we know it as of the time of the meeting tonight. And we wanted to get it to you in case there's any board input or feedback. And if there are changes or more details that emerge, I should say, we'll get those to you as well, because we really wanted the board directors to be informed as to what all these events are in case they are being asked questions and being asked to be ambassadors or representatives of the district. So there is the document.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, thank you for providing the document. I think that's wonderful. I know I've been approached by members of the community asking about teacher recognition and retirements. And I see that that's on here, so that's terrific. I think this is a point where we can connect to the new journal. I'd like to see the district office proactively doing some press releases on these, maybe not necessarily on the events, although we could follow up with some pictures on that, but because we're not having the same level of coverage on teacher recognition, maybe we can do a press release journal for that, so that members of our community can recognize the years of service and retirees amongst our staff. Since we've, in the past, we've been able to get brochures and have community attendance at that event. And that may be true for similar events with the end of the year. I'd just like to see us for ways to get out, not just on our Twitter feed and on Facebook, but to try and get a brick and mortar kind of piece out in the community.
We can certainly do that.
Like a great idea. Do we have any other questions or comments on your events? Brian?
I see the calendar here. Are these plans for drop off and such on June 8th and the like being coordinated by the respective principals at each of those locations? One reason I'm asking is because other than the high school, which has been a very robust plan, I haven't really seen anything in terms of planning around the elementary events or the middle school events.
Yeah, so Brian, this was my ask of them as we talked about the work session. All the administrators at each site are very good at getting the word out to their specific community, but in their efficiency, they don't always pull back to let the full community, and in this case, let the board have a sneak preview. So we've communicated that to them and gave them this afternoon as the deadline for getting that document they should see in front of you. And now they'll, like I said, if they don't receive any guidance from the board tonight, they'll proceed with the details and not only get that out to their communities, but share that at the district level so we can give you updates on each one, because as board directors, not only do you want to be aware, but you may want to, one of these and wave or hand something out, whatever it is that is a part of that plan. And if you know it, you can better, determine your schedule and communicate on that. So that would be the next step today was the deadline for just getting this document down. And the part of getting this document down was that individual sites aren't stepping on each other's toes. There's not a retirement party going on at the same time we're turning in things or, recognizing students or anything like that. And so you can see from this document, they did a good job of spreading them out, but it's going to be a flurry of activity as we wrap up the year. So there'll be plenty going on just about every day as we close out.
All right, do we have any other questions or comments on this piece? All right, and thank you for everyone for getting the dates to us. And I know we're continuing to work on it, and I appreciate kind of getting this heads up and following along with all of the plans. So moving on, we'll go into our administrative reports, beginning with Superintendent Peshtin.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple miscellaneous things, and then we'll go through those items that you have a document attached in board book. From a facilities use perspective, I sent out a message to the board last evening that because we've tried to mirror the city whenever we can with as far as playgrounds and kind of open park areas on the school district grounds, we actually have signage out at our playgrounds saying that we're aligned with the city decision to close playgrounds. And as the city opens them back up, we want to remove that signage so that there isn't confusion. We don't want to promote the playground and park use because then there might be an assumption that we're out there sanitizing and cleaning the equipment, which we're not. But at a minimum, we want to take down the signs that say that we're aligned with the city. Right now, through June 5th, we'd like to keep signage up restricting and the fencing and everything up that restricts Pinecrest Elementary to be used for our childcare program only through June 5th. And then we have a meeting on Thursday scheduled with community ed and activities, building and grounds, to really break down all of the guidance we received so far from last Friday on about summer programs. There's some very informative guidance coming out on what we can do for the summer, and it's a significant shift. We want to absorb everything that happens before Thursday and really start making some decisions about everything from indoor swimming pool to which playgrounds will be restricted and cleaned on a regular basis and which ones would be open, and what recreation or summer programs we'll have. We're going to put a preliminary plan together on Thursday based on the best information that we have at that time. Know that the guidance that came out last Friday, we can go ahead and plan childcare for the summer. We have to follow all safety guidelines, so it'll look very similar to the emergency workers families childcare that we're providing right now. On June 5th, the requirement to offer childcare for emergency workers for no charge ends on June 5th. So the plan would be to go back to our normal fee schedule effective the following Monday. The only requirement is that we still make Tier 1 and Tier 2 emergency workers their children as our highest priority as far as reserving spots. And then we could take other clients that are not in Tier 1 or Tier 2 after we give them their priority for registration. We are able to do some modified early childhood family education. Other things happening over the weekend, for example, we had an education omnibus bill roll through, and we'll actually break that down at the work session because there are a few things in there that are worth noting and talking about a little bit more detail, but there weren't really any surprises. I think we kind of anticipated everything that's in there so far. We're also got news that hopefully some federal dollars for COVID relief is going to make its way to schools. And in particular, maybe our childcare service or other services that we were required to provide under the executive order may receive some funding, but nothing firm on that. So we're hoping at the work session, we can kind of break down the finances that are coming out legislatively. And obviously it looks like a extra legislative session as well. So that'll be dynamic as we go through. Then just going through the administrative reports here. I'm not very familiar with the fundraising report. It's part of our policy that we provide a fundraising report to the board at specific intervals. So this is the first one since I've been here. You're supposed to get a May report, so there is the report. And certainly ask questions about it. But especially for the new board members, this is new to you as well. It's kind of the public reporting of what has been approved for fundraisers out there, so that there's a record of it, and people have a place they could check when they're approached about fundraising opportunity to see if it really was a school fundraising opportunity and not somebody, inferring the school is involved. And then the other items on there are the bond summary, which is we've been doing for a few months here, just to give you an update on the accounting of construction projects in relation to the bond funding, and then our two views at enrollment. And keep in mind that the only way we drop somebody from enrollment here as we're closing out the year is if they did not participate for 15 consecutive days or they withdrew. Otherwise, they stay on our rolls under these distance learning scenario. I'll pause there and see if there's questions about any of those.
Have any questions about those three updates? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sending those our way and keeping us up to date. We'll do the committee reports with these committee. So I wrote this one. I never know how much we should be writing, and I'm kind of wordy. So, but the facilities committee, we just met once this month and we'll be meeting again here soon. We were looking at the updated bid calendar, continuing discussions around the high school security entrances, as well as the restroom and locker room privacy enhancements. We discussed the upcoming space needs for Tilden, given that with COVID, we are uncertain about what preschool is going to do in the fall. And again, just continuing to update our priority list for the remaining bond funds. So we're really working on just trying to get these meetings regular so that we can continue to look at them and follow along with the bond, and then we can just continue to keep our priorities up front. So although we don't know what's going on with preschool, the facilities committee is recommending that we continue to move forward with the changes that we had discussed. Principal Johnson has said that these additions and changes are beneficial to the high school as well. And so even if for some reason preschool does not move there, these would be good additions to the school. And regardless of what's going on with Tilden and with the preschool program, we do know that ECSE is growing. And so we do need to figure out space. And so continuing to talk about the space needs for the district and long-term where that's going to go, really important. And so we're trying to keep up with that. Regarding privacy enhancements, rooms would include full partitions, floor to ceiling, and we're still trying to figure out how we balance the supervision and the safety aspect. Wold had discussed removing that front wall for the bathrooms in the high school, like Principal Johnson had suggested. Cam Peterson is still questioning whether that is the right decision. And so we're still having some discussions on what that would look like. So that recommendation is not set up yet, but we will continue discussing that at our next facility meeting. We did discuss the privacy enhancements to the bathrooms near the middle school auditorium. And so the middle school admin had actually given feedback that if they were to make privacy enhanced bathrooms, that would not be their ideal location. However, one of the reasons we had looked at the spot by the auditorium is because that is a place where we need to do ADA enhancements. And so while we're in there for that bathroom, making privacy enhancements is something to add on to that. And so we have asked school principals to give us their feedback about which bathroom they would prefer, and just have that as a discussion point, not saying that we would do another bathroom, but trying to understand what they would be looking at and make sure that that is on our radar. And then last up, we also briefly discussed the high school retaining wall. It's crumbling in some places, and trying to figure out what the best way to improve that wall is. It's much higher. The bid or the estimated cost is much higher than we had initially thought. Originally, we had budgeted $5,700 for this project, and the estimates are coming to be more around $50,000. And so we're trying to look at which improvement is going to be the best use of district dollars and last the longest. And so that is another one that we are going to continue looking at options at our next facility meeting.
Yeah, I just think there was an item that you missed, although you did cover it in the notes, just to point out, and that's the modification of athletic and FIAD locker rooms at the high school to bring their shower facilities closer to what those of us that were on the board previously were able to tour at the middle school. Given that the privacy might very well increase the number of showers that are being taken, we've asked WOLD to look at a layout that does not reduce the number of shower heads. Their previous cost estimate was based on, did have a reduction in number of showers, so they're just looking at a new layout. We don't know if there's what the cost impacts are or the trade-offs on that. Mike Johnson and Trent were able to share that use is quite low, and that they've accommodated students different ways, to students' gear in different ways, and so that there's probably space within the existing locker room footprint, and we'll just look at a new layout.
Thank you. And that is in the note, so
Yeah.
But I apologize for not bringing that up in my summary. Any questions about facilities? Otherwise, we can go on to policy committee update. Stephanie, do you have this one?
Yes. Okay, so for policy committee, we met over Zoom and talked over, as you can see in the summary, the unpaid meal changes, and then we talked extensively about 710A, which is the alternate transportation permissions, and we worked on some wording in that particular one to make sure that it was covering all bases. So in town, within the city limits, and then out of town, because obviously games might be treated a little bit differently than practices, for parents to now opt out of those permissions. But if they do not elect specifically those opt-out options, then they are giving permissions. If you've taken a look at that new verbiage, let me know. Hopefully we've hacked out all the concerns and that it's clear and concise. And a huge shout out to Trent and Jackie Kranz for working that piece. For first read of mandatory policies, missing in our policy book right now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Went over, just taking a look at my notes. 620, the credit for learning, we did make a modification with that, and I believe that's in available for view to add in the weighted grades. And Kelsey and Brian, do you recall any further discussion on that particular piece?
Well, it was to remove the part about weighted grades, since we don't do weighted grades.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All I have on here was adopt with changes to weighted grades. So
yeah, MSBA's recommended policy, it's almost like a choose your own adventure. And if you have weighted grades, you follow this side. And if you don't, you follow this side. And so we just had to pick which side to use. That's really how that worked.
And then we went over and selected a few for first read. Don't think we made any modifications. We're adopting either what was currently in the policy book or adopted from SBA. And then we went through and we prioritized future policies that we're going to be reviewing.
Right. Do you have any questions about the summary? Otherwise, these policies, at least for first reads and such, will be down further in the agenda. All right. So a summary from the Finance Committee.
That will be me again. So with the Finance Committee, if you take a look at that summary here, we discussed quite a bit. To highlight the big pieces, we are, revamping that mission statement and then adding a mid-August meeting and finance plan. I know I just dropped out of Zoom, but that's why I have it on my phone too. So, second piece to that was, okay, so school resource officer and crossing guards. Discuss that about maybe making that a 2-year or 1-year contract, and then moving forward with the city to add in the verbiage regarding a prorated amount, because right now it sounds like we don't have that in there. And if school is not in session, let's say this fall, we're still closed, we want to make sure that we have something in there regarding that. The recommendation for FY21 meal prices, there will be or proposing an increase of 5 cents to each meal. The transfer options, Jen brought this up. It's the last update that we received was that the fund transfer had to happen in June. It is now extended to November 30th of 2020. It's a little bit more time. We'll have a better idea of where we're sitting come this fall. Activities budget, creating a memorandum of understanding for the coaches and advisors for the canceling or prorated season. Again, right now we don't have anything. We don't have any verbiage that's in there, and that needs to be addressed because of obviously the pandemic. And then the staffing requests, just given kind of where we're at right now, we need to just take a pause on staffing and take a look at, okay, well, we kind of know where we're at right now, but we don't know where we're going to be in the fall. And with staffing, it will be prioritized, making sure that the current and future vacancies, that there's discussion surrounding those new hires, and we're prioritizing those positions. Does anybody have any questions? Or, Lisa and Brian, you can, or Jeff and Jen, add to that.
Add one point of clarification on item 4A, activities budget. The discussion of the suggestion by the committee is to have administration begin talking with Teachers Association about a possible MOU for Schedule C coaches and advisors. That is for the future, because we've already decided to honor the efforts of coaches and to pay those stipends for this year. But what we want to do is be prepared for next year if there's disruption in any of the sports or activities, that we have those conversations now to build in some mechanics for how we might deal with those changes. But I didn't want anybody to hear that or see that and think that we were backtracking on this year.
Jeff, thank you. I just had 2 points. One is just to go off of what Stephanie already said about I think the finance committee, given we don't know what the enrollment's going to look like, we are unclear on some level about what potential funding is even going to look like. Might be delays in the allocation that feels uncertain. That our direction is that administrators should live with their right-sized FTE numbers that have already been provided, and that we would not be looking at ads, first of all, and use that, and then we'll make an assessment given whatever fall looks like and the actual number of students that show up, should there need to be ads at this point. But then secondly, should there be a position that comes vacant through resignation or retirement, that it's not a given that it's filled. It's also not a given that it's frozen, but that we're asking administrators to work collaboratively when those positions are identified to speak to their the district leadership team and talk about what would this fill look like? Do we have this resource somewhere else? Could we fill it? Does it need to be filled now? Can we make an assessment to fill it in August? And just to have a collaborative discussion, immediate response to fill. And then the last thing is that it seems very, very, very likely at this time that the adopted budget that we will act on in June will have a negative balance and will withdraw from our fund reserve. At that time, our policy states that we will, as a board, be giving direction to the administrative team to develop a financial plan to get us back to a balanced budget. Now, obviously, we'd work in collaboration with that administrative team, but that is of adopting the budget in June. So you should expect to see that as part of the adoption.
Right, thank you. I think that's really important that we already know that we're going to have this deficit next year, and we absolutely need to talk about what this looks like in the future and how we get out of this deficit. So thank you.
Do you have anything to add? Came back in on the picture. No?
Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments regarding the Finance Committee notes? Okay. Last committee summary is from self-funded insurance.
We just met this afternoon. We had data through the third week of April. So at that time, the summary here, plan year to date claims are running at 96% of expected compared to 94% last year, but also importantly compared to 99 and 98% in previous months. So again, this was claims through April 20. So we're not really seeing much of a downturn yet at that point due to COVID-19. And I would expect that we will see a little bit of a downturn there as a lot of the elective items were not happening. People were generally staying away from the doctor's offices. But on the flip side, pharmacy spend was up because they had loosened the restrictions on refill too soon and so forth. Total plan year to date claims are up 12% from this plan year. Well, my report just went away. There we go. Claims on a per member basis are up 8% from this time last year. We're up 8% every year going back one from that. So we're up 8% 2 years ago and another 8% this year. We went through and we looked at we have 9 high claimants, and that is defined as a claimant that is at the $100,000 mark. So we have a $200,000 plan stop loss, which means that our primary plan pays the first $200,000 of the claim, and then anything beyond that goes to our reinsurance, which is another premium that we pay. So it's important to keep an eye on that because that reinsurance pays a lot of attention to your claims history for those high claimants and adjusts their accordingly. So overall, we're still in very, very good shape. We did at our last meeting recommend a 2% increase. In looking at the funding and the costs that we're seeing, we definitely about that decision and about that recommendation coming forth from the committee. As of April 20, our balance in the self-funded care account was $4.945 million. And we have a fund balance policy for that of $2.678 million. So still quite healthy, but like we talked about, we're not building that reserve anymore. We're kind of at the top, and we don't want it to be a roller coaster drop here. We want it to be a very controlled, gentle rollout, where we don't have any big increases hopefully on the horizon. we'll see what happens. There's a lot of uncertainty around healthcare and what that's going to look like after COVID-19 pandemic and even throughout the rest of 2020. So nobody really has much for answers as to what that's going to mean at this time. Stay tuned. But overall, we're in a good position. On the dental side, it's a much shorter story. Very, very healthy dental fund balance. We've taken 0% increase. If you recall, we recommended a 0% increase, and that was passed for the next 2 years. So we have a rolling balance right now of $746,000, and that equates to about 16 and a half months of planned costs. So we're in good shape. Total costs are down 12% over this time last year. Again, a lot of this has to do with COVID-19 closures. Dental offices were closed for all but emergency procedures in most cases. So it will be interesting. We're anticipating that May spend is going to be low as well. But the interesting point here will be for routine visits. You know, you're every 6 months, hey, I'm going in for my routine cleaning, etc. Are people going to reschedule that routine cleaning, or are they just going to pass on that one and wait another 6 months for their normally scheduled one? So again, we'll see what happens there, but that plan, again, very good shape. So overall, good news, but we do have some uncertainty on the horizon as we just don't know what the impact of COVID-19 will be going forward.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions about this? Okay. So at this point, we can move into our action items. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
Second? Okay. All right, thank you. Any discussion? I would just like to do a huge thank you to Dave for volunteering to be the board representative on 9/17. I will be sending an email out to see if board members interested, or which board members would be interested in taking some of his duties from other committees in order to decrease that workload on him. I'll send that out, and hopefully we have a couple people who can step up and be a part of those committees.
Thank you, Dave. That's a big time
thanks, Dave.
commitment.
I thought maybe he didn't know he was on there, so we just weren't going to.
we
Yeah.
were gonna
Yeah,
sneak it in the consent
We're just
agenda.
going to make it a consent item, and he was never going to know.
Yeah, surprise! April Fools, little late.
Oh, sorry, already moved. What's one to do?
Yeah, it's official. All right. So then all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, individual items for action. Whoops, we get moved. Okay, policies.
I'm just going to set this up and turn it over to the policy committee members, but those policies that are on their third reading are eligible to be approved today, and they can continue on with additional readings if necessary. I know that the activities department would really like to see, would like to include the alternate transportation policy into their activities handbook and their planning for next year. So that one is a little bit more time sensitive. The lunches obviously will be an impact in September. And then the other ones are first readings. So you can't approve those or adopt those today. But if there are any suggestions to get them prepared for a second reading and possible adoption, we'll take care of any adjustments that we hear about there. Policy 540, being it's just being renumbered to get in alignment with the MSBA nomenclature. 540 could be approved tonight, or it could just wait till the second reading, whichever is simpler.
Okay. All right, so We will begin by looking at policy 534, which is the unpaid meal charges. And this was really trying to come up with a new policy surrounding how we were going to be outreaching and connecting with families that had the negative budget. There had been some questions about it in one of our other meetings, and we have tried to go in and make sure all of that was clear.
The only question I have, and it's not at all to the base of the policy, but in a couple places, I could give them to you specifically. It says, the parent / guardian. And in a couple places it says parent, one place it says parent, and one place it says families. So I think consistency of language between and leaning towards parent guardian would probably be appropriate throughout. And then the other one was still that question about you can't have volunteers at the very end where you're talking about you can't have volunteers do the follow-up on high outstanding. I just want to make sure that we're clear that we could have a contracted employee. Like if we were to hire a contracting firm and say, okay, like a firm and say, all right, you guys, these calls, that's not a volunteer, but it's not I don't know if that qualifies as a district employee. Those are the two things that popped out at me.
I'm looking at that section in section, it must be section 3, letter E. It says the following individuals may personally call students, parents / guardians, mail letters, or send letters home in students' backpack if necessary. And that was the Food and Nutrition Services Department Director or Secretary, and individual school building principals, secretaries, social workers, or community support social workers. So did that get...
This is a data privacy question here.
Right.
Is you're basically saying people are not involved in lunch balance information unless they have a need to know. So we're identifying who has a need to know. We can contract with a collections agency to collect a generic debt that somebody owes the district, but we wouldn't be sharing the circumstances behind their status as far as free and reduced price lunch, how they got into that debt, et cetera, et cetera. We would just have a legitimate debt that a third-party firm would be collecting. So we can expand
to be
no access, but we want to be on solid footing as to why they are the person that has a need to know, and volunteers would not fit under that category of getting involved in the lunch discussion.
Right.
I completely agree. I just remember this was a conversation. So the one I'm looking at, Scott, is actually in subsection 4.
For letter D.
Letter D.
Yeah.
School district may not enlist the assistance of non-school district employees such as volunteers to engage in debt collection efforts.
Right.
So that's when you get past
Gotcha, yeah.
those first calls and you're making contact during the school year. This is that post-school year. It's been turned over to the superintendent. And I would be comfortable with that. I'm still not clear why it says not volunteers, because they're not on the previous list. So I don't know if we reference the previous list or we say identified school district employees and appropriate contractors. Because you're right, I think the list is very comprehensive in the previous section. It's just less clear in that 4th section.
The reason it's on there is it's in blackface, which means it was part of the old policy. So we just need
We're just going to keep it to be.
No, we could change it, but as we've made such significant edits, it doesn't always look like it's a coherent document. And so anywhere where the reference to the family, we can absolutely go back and edit that with just an eye towards making it and the original part line up for language choice. And we can clarify that 4D, we could put that we will not enlist the assistance of non-school district employees such as volunteers to engage in debt collection efforts. We can also further define it to say that we may contract with professional third-party firms for debt collection.
Well, but Part C says that.
I don't think it's the whole thing.
Right. So I don't know that in D it seems weird to then repeat that we can use
Okay.
collection
Or we could
agencies.
take D off because, like you said, it's a residual part from the old policy. And if it's clear that we're not doing those in a earlier part, we can just take D off because then it's redundant, and MSBA will tell you if you're not saying something new with any language, take it off because it's just making it a more difficult policy.
I think that's the way to go, is take that D right out of there.
You can do that. 4D.
On an administrative note, it looks like we have 2 section 4s. Needs to be renumbered as well. Or at least on the one that I'm looking at.
You're right.
No,
That correction.
Then do we need to push this to next month since we've made changes?
Yep, and we've got plenty of time, so we'll make the edits. If anybody sees any other edits, by all means, point them out. And we'll just we'll have a clean version without the edits on next month. Just so that you can, I think it just reads better once you take all the edits out and can see if it appears to be a coherent document that somebody can read and fully understand. Because a lot of work was done on it.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the next policy is 710A, which is the permission form for alternative transportation. So like Stephanie had said earlier during the policy committee summary, we did spend a lot of time on this, and there's been a lot of back and forth even since then, since our last meeting, and trying to figure out the wording on this and make sure that it aligns with all the stakeholders. So did you want to talk about this since you've been working with Trent and Jackie?
Sure. So on the second page, you'll see where it says permission for alternative transportation. This is the verbiage that I was talking about. It's actually originally we had an opt-in portion and then it was cut into 2 subcategories. After talking with Trent, their system just doesn't allow for something like that. It's not feasible. And if we have a policy out there that doesn't link up with the system where it's easy to be in compliance, it's obsolete. So he proposed doing this opt-out version and clearly highlighting that, the parent has to say, I do not give permission for these different categories. So that is what we went back and forth with, and Trent and Jackie were able to come up with this specific verbiage.
Stephanie, on the second portion of that, and I appreciate the list, I think that certainly feels comprehensive. The second portion about ride authorization process, it's right now it doesn't align with the student handbook because the parent handbook, because it says you have to be the parent or guardian. I could not authorize another driver to drive my child. It has to be that child's parent or guardian. And in here, the ride authorization process, an authorized adult driver, is its intent, as you understood it, to expand the potential drivers beyond the parent and guardian, in which case I presume this language would go into the parent handbook. Or is it did you feel like he wants to constrain the drivers only to the parent or guardian? And I think the example we gave is a situation where Brian had to drive his son and my wife had to drive our son from the same place to the same place at the same time because of that parent driver constraint.
Right. Jeff, did Trent bring this up at all in your discussions?
Before I attempt to answer, let's see. Trent, are you on the call right now?
I don't see him.
Okay, I know he was going to plan to come in later. So all I know is that his preference is if we could get this into a final policy here in May, he could update all of their documents, the activity handbook and all these things, and have this in its entirety in there, along with an explanation of what we're doing. And, just for the record, being we're recording this for the public record, I want to reinforce what we talked about in the committee is we are not coming up with airtight liability defense on something going wrong with transportation here. The most protection that we can have is to only provide district transportation for all activity travel, whether it be a licensed contractor that's inspected by the Minnesota Department of Safety, or using our own vehicles that are inspected by the Minnesota Department of Safety, and having an annual license for type 3 drivers within our district. Those are the two categories that we're the safest. Obviously, that doesn't work very well for the circumstances in Hastings. So you're looking for that happy medium, or I guess the compromise. I don't know if it's happy, but it's a compromise between having no coverage under the current case law regarding student transportation and having more coverage than we did before, and somehow giving that flexibility so that the practicality of being a parent and being a participant is addressed here. And so that's how it's been refined down to this. It is not a blanket coverage of complete protection. And then when we get down to the ride authorization process, that's the part that was customized specifically by the committee and by the activities administration to try to find that balance between the two. And so I can't answer specifically how well that works because I've not been a participant or a parent in Hastings activities. So could do is clarify with Trent when he comes on the line later. Or like I said, I prefer not to delay it another month. What we have the option though of doing is June coming and making any modifications. If we find an error, we can modify them again in June, but we can get allow Trent to get going on the process of getting their documents ready for fall sports.
Is it just a matter of updating that parent handbook if we have this language?
I think so. I think it is. I think it's just so my question was just whether you had a specific conversation about in a situation where transportation is being provided by the district, but we're opting into a child going separately for whatever reason, with limited reason. Does it have to be with a parent, which is our current practice, or did Trent want to see that expanded? And it sounds like maybe there wasn't a specific conversation about that.
No, that specifically was not brought up, Lisa.
Okay. And I think you could, obviously all that you would have to do is change, I don't know, maybe one line in the parent handbook to this. I just didn't know what Trent's intent was.
Well, I think the intent was to try to be as flexible as possible and to be as practical as possible, because if we ask
it's more flexible than our current practice.
Yeah. If we asked a school law firm what their thoughts on this, they would say, don't do it. And so we're doing something that exposes a little bit more liability because of the specific situations happening in Hastings with the Civic Center, with Todd Field, with these, other peripheral things. It's just, it isn't practical. And so we have to take a little bit of risk. And so I think that's what he was shooting for, because that part in the blue there, that was all customized for Hastings between the committee and the activities office. None of that came from the legal draft that we started with as our foundation.
Right. And I completely appreciate that. And actually, as a parent who's got a kid that fits in this situation, I think this is very clarifying, and it would be terrific to be handing it to 9th and 10th grade parents, as they see their kid maybe hopping in somebody else's car and driving over to the arena. Should have figured out what was going to happen, but I was still shocked the first time it happened. I don't know why, but I was. So I appreciate that. And I think putting that clarity in front of people and letting them choose is terrific. Fine, expanding is to drive somebody home situation when the bus is coming, right? The bus is coming to a baseball game to drive your kid home. but there's a band concert that night, right? So the two band kids are going to hop in the car with their parents, drive back to get back to the band concert, right? They're going to leave one school event to go to another school event. It's very irregular. Do you want to let one parent? This language says one adult authorized driver. Like I could take 4 baseball boys in my van and drive back to the band concert. Opposed to having
Unless their
4
parent had
separate
opted out
parents.
of that, unless their parent had opted out above of that situation. It could be much more restrictive for their own child. They could say no other adult.
These are two
driver.
situations, though. One is a ride is provided and one a ride is not. But the
Yeah.
second one, the ride is
I think we
provided.
want clarification from Trent because you're right, it's 2 situations. We know there are ongoing regular practice circumstances where we don't provide any transportation, period.
Yep, and I love that clarification. I love that clarification, and I think it's very comprehensive.
So it sounds like we need Trent to weigh in. We need a bit more clarification on this. I did have one question, and that was with the verbiage as we start the list. So it says, I do not give permission for my child to ride to or that apply. Should that be to or from?
Correct. Yes. Thank you for finding that. If we can get that corrected. Good catch.
We'll fix that to or from. So what you may want to do if you want to keep the meeting moving is exercise your parliamentary muscles here and just table this this item, just 710A only. Table it definitely to the end of the action. So we basically make it item 11, I think, and come right back to it because Trent will be here for item 9. And you can ask him to hang on and come back to this one if you want to, or you can approve it and know that we'll modify it again in June, but at least this is approved and Trent can begin working with it, knowing that we'll make these edits right away that you suggest tonight, and then just do a formal approval of it again of a version in June.
Okay, do we have a motion to table it to the end of our action items?
I move we table to end of action items. Let's give Trent a chance to weigh in.
Second? Okay,
And the
So we need to-
adding to or from, that's just a technicality. We'll take care of that.
Right. Yeah, that would not give me pause in passing it because of that small piece of verbiage. I'm sure that can be added.
okay. Do we have any discussion about tabling it? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we'll come back to this one later when Trent hops on.
And I just want to thank all the directors for looking at these with an extra scrutiny, because it has been a challenge to do Zoom meetings for policy. There's just, especially 2 policies like this that are so unique and detailed. It'd be great to have 10 months to go through these and keep refining them, but we're trying to do it obviously quicker, and we're trying to do it over Zoom. So I think you guys have done a great job of really looking at this carefully to help us get it dialed in.
All right, so then we have a list of policies that are mandatory that we're doing a first reading of. And so has everyone had a chance to look over these?
Talking about them as a group, or do we want a couple individual comments?
Talk about them individually. So we can start.
We can't approve them tonight, so
Yeah.
but we could take any feedback on any of them. The only one that you could approve tonight is 540.
Flashback to when I used to work for the federal government. I made myself read 721 all the way to the end. I felt very much like I was in a contracting law class. It was lovely. It's very comforting.
Yeah, do you have any feedback on any of these for the policy committee for, I mean, we can start with 721, the uniform grant guidance policy regarding federal revenue sources.
This is a general comment across the board. When they come back for second readings, I note a number of these have bold italicized print, which is really sort of questions or comments from MSBA. They're not actually policy language. They're like, hey, here's a thing to think about. And maybe we could just get good about pulling those sections out when they come back for a second reading for approval. So that it doesn't somehow just doesn't get stuck in there permanently.
Yeah, and some districts actually leave those in, and
Yeah.
Becky and I talked about this all the way back in January, is that when they do come up for approval, or when they're drafts, we will leave that italicized language in there because it helps the directors understand why the policy is what it is. And then when it comes back for approval, it'll be a clean copy with all those things taken out, because then they do kind of drag down the policy. But they're good, on your first reads to, clarifying information. So if we fail to take something off, we can always do that after you approve it, before it goes into the policy book. But that's been our plan since January, is to present them with the extra information and then clean up the copy before they're approved.
Okay, so then the next policy to look at is 620, which is the credit for learning.
This is just that comment, and it really speaks to the point Jeff just said, which is it does have the note in there, like if then, the choose your own adventure. We want to only go forward with the language associated with does not have weighted grades. And just drop that whole chunk, the italicized part and the alternative.
Right, and we did drop the alternative in here.
I felt like I read it, but maybe not the most.
It has a
Now
line.
it says 620. Now I see it's the 520. So, all right, the one I looked at the other day.
Yeah, so on page 6 of policy 620, section 8, it talks about weighted grades, and that's where you can see that we kept the first option. The district does not offer weighted grades, and we lined out the around if we did have weighted grades.
Yeah. I'm not sure that was there earlier in the week, but I see that it's dated today and it is there. So got it.
Okay. So are there any other questions or comments for the policy committee on this one? Okay. Next policy is 616, school district system accountability. Scott?
Page 3 down at the bottom, there's a section there where it has a date by which it will be established every year, and it just says date. So we'll need to define what that is.
I'm just taking notes. All right. Any other questions or comments, Lisa?
Comment is there's a couple advisory committees that are identified in this policy. And I just want to make sure that and I'm sure that you already are, that the policy committee is touching base with Jen Reichel and making sure that we have alignment between committee names and the names that are identified in this policy. Like Graduation Standard Implementation Committee and a couple others, just to make sure that there's consistency in language practice in the policy.
Good point, Lisa.
Yep, that's a good catch. Anything else? Okay, policy 612, development of parent and family engagement policies for Title I programs.
I would just encourage the policy committee to get a little feedback from the principals, the elementary principals, which is where our Title I coordination happens, again, around consistency of language or current practice.
Okay. Anything else? The last one of these is 427 workload limits for certain special education teachers. Questions or comments? All right, so section 7BI3, new or substantially revised policies for first reading. So our first one is policy 408, the subpoena of a school district employee. This is just one that's been on the list for a while now, and so we wanted to make sure that this gets brought up as something to do. Any questions or comments about this policy? Okay. Policy 419, tobacco-free environment, possession and use of tobacco. Questions about this policy? Not seeing any. Okay. Policy 515, protection and privacy of student records.
My only question on this one is I might have gotten lost in the 33 pages of the policy, or lost attention span or something, but I didn't see any modifications highlighted or lined out. Is this a totally new, this isn't a totally new policy for us? Or am I misunderstanding which
Let me come up here.
group it's in? Maybe something in the notes about it had something to do with library cards.
Yeah, so they're
And
working
I didn't see it
on-
when I looked through the policy.
It does have to do with library cards. They're working on being able to get students just library cards, making sure all of our students have library cards. And so for that, we needed to be looking at this policy. And so Missy Williams had actually brought this up to us in the fall. So this has been something that's also been on the list for a while to try to make sure that this is in place so that we can get library cards for students.
Okay.
So
I
the,
think
lang-
it's
yeah,
fine.
so the update in it Missy researched what it would take, and there was, a whole lot of involvement with it about how to get this library card option. So they did research on what edits would be needed to make the current policy effective for allowing them to do the cards. And I have a marked up version in my folder here. And I think we moved already from the marked up version to the cleaner version. But it is in there, the language that they had requested, which is why it's on there. So it is in there.
Okay, it's just not shown as a highlight anymore.
Yeah, and I will double check with my notes that I have where that are marked up on paper to make sure that it's in there. But when I read it, before I sent it to Becky, it was in there. I can't remember if we cleaned it up since then or not. But yeah, that's what that was about, and I will double check it again.
All right. So do we have any, I know that makes it a little more difficult. Any questions or comments about this policy? Policy 535, service animals in schools.
And that's just brand new. That's the MSBA model policy right there with no changes.
Any questions about this one?
And we don't have, so I want to clear, this is when we have it, but it has a different number, or we don't have it at all?
We don't have it at all. And it's recommended by MSBA because obviously,
Yeah.
when you have a service animal situation and you have no policy, you've got things in the wrong order. So we're trying to get out in front of it.
Right.
It's a straight up model policy then, my understanding, Jeff, is you said we could adopt it today? Or is
No,
that a different
no, we
number?
can't because it's new. We have to do 2 readings.
Okay. Which one did you say we could adopt straight up? Because it was
540.
540. Am I looking at the wrong thing?
Right now we're on 535.
Oh.
540 is
Okay.
the next
Sorry.
policy.
I double clicked.
Was this the renumbering thing we did?
Yeah, this,
Yep.
the one that I'm proposing is 540, was the Hastings number 535. But MSBA has the service animals as 535.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
you don't want to have numbers that are different than MSBA unless you have a novel policy that MSBA doesn't have. And if MSBA does number something and you add it, you want to move your novel policy to a different number so that you don't get the confusion going back and forth between MSBA and yourself. And so this was in place, and I did check on this, and we went through with the policy committee. Other than taking the names of the individuals who will do the work out, because you want to have the positions, not the names, because names eventually change. This one has to do with an Office of Civil Rights review, and it was recommended that should have this policy to make sure it is addressing the things that were pointed out in the review. And so this is, that's why Hastings has it, and it's not an MSBA policy, but they just put it on a number that MSBA has now grabbed. So it's just a renumbering and a very minor edit of taking the names out of the document. Because it was based on legal guidance coming out of that OCR review, I would not tamper with it at all other than to make that numbering change and take the names off.
All right, so we can make a motion to approve this policy tonight.
Yep, or leave it sit and do the whole batch next month.
Motion to approve it tonight, or would the board prefer to wait until next month?
If we can take one off, Kelsey, I move that we take care of 540 tonight.
Right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, and so then can we just vote now, or do I need to move this to the bottom of the?
Action item so you can vote.
Okay, all right, just sometimes, just checking. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All right, motion carries. All right, so that moves us out of policies, and we're now on to non-contract rates of pay. Jeff, do you want to discuss this?
Yeah, unless Jen has something to say about it, it's just an action item to set those compensation for any areas that are not covered by a master agreement, and to set it for the fiscal year.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments about this? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So
Dave?
moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Carries. All right, next up is the ISD 917 long-term facility maintenance 10-year plan.
So as Dave Pemble will find out, ISD, once 917 gets out in front of us by about a month on their LTFM plan, because they have to go to the member districts to agree to the plan and to pay their share of the maintenance for their membership at 917. So you'll be getting hundreds LTFM plan to approve here shortly, but right now we need to do a resolution if we support the plan put before us by 917.
I will go ahead with that now. So now's the time that we do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Pursuant to due call and notice thereof, a school board meeting of Independent School District 200, State of Minnesota was held on May 20, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. for the purpose and part of approving the Intermediate School District number 917's long-term facility maintenance budget and authorizing the inclusion of a proportionate share of Intermediate School District's long-term facility maintenance projects in the district's application for long-term facility maintenance. I, Stephanie Malm, introduced the following resolution and moved its adoption. Resolution approving Intermediate School District number 917 long-term facility maintenance program budget and authorizing the inclusion of a proportionate share of those projects in the district's application for long-term facility maintenance revenue. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 200, State of Minnesota as follows. School Board of Intermediate School District 917 has approved the long-term facility maintenance program budget for its facilities for 2021 to 2022 school year in the amount of $27,053, of which our District 200's proportionate share is $2,053.32. The various components of this program budget are attached as Exhibit A here to and are incorporated herein for reference. Said budget is hereby approved. Exhibit A. Minnesota Statute Section 123B.57 Subdivision 1 as amended provides that if an intermediate school district's long-term facility maintenance budget is approved by the school boards of each of the intermediate school district's member school districts, each member district may include its proportionate share of the costs of the intermediate school district program in its long-term facility maintenance revenue application. The proportionate share of the costs of the intermediate school district's long-term facility maintenance program for each member school district to be included in its application shall be determined by multiplying the total cost of the intermediate school district long-term facility maintenance program times a formula that weighs two components equally between the member district's total net tax capacity and adjusted marginal cost pupil units. The long-term facility maintenance cost shall be funded through annual levy instead of issuing bonds. The inclusion of this proportionate share in the district's long-term facility maintenance revenue application for fiscal year 2022 is hereby approved subject to approval by the Commissioner of Education. Upon receipt of the proportionate share of long-term facility maintenance revenue attributable to the intermediate school district program, the district shall promptly pay to the intermediate school district the applicable aid or levy process. Of the adoption of the foregoing resolution, can I get a second?
Move.
Duly seconded by and upon vote taken, being taken hereon and following voted in favor thereof. So we will do a roll call vote. Lisa?
Yes.
Brian Davis,
Yes.
Lisa Hedin,
Yes.
Scott Gergen,
Yes.
Stephanie Malm, yes. Dave Pemble, and Kelsey Waits.
Yes.
Upon said resolution was declared duly passed and adopted.
Good there.
Okay, good. I met my word quota there, and there is a spider hanging right above my head, so I had to keep my composure.
Is it a big spider?
No, it looks like a wolf spider, so they're pretty friendly.
Okay. So the next agenda item is the Pinecrest roof deferred maintenance bids. We're looking for a motion to accept the recommended qualifying bid with alternates.
You could do the two together or separate, however you want to do them. One is the bid with alternates for the deferred maintenance, and the other one is for the roof replacement.
We have a motion to accept the bids with alternates. Bids, or do you want to do them separate?
But
I'm
before,
open to that.
yeah, before we go on, can someone please remind me what we are spending, what we are doing for the Hastings High School parking lot? We just did that.
That's the athletic lot. West End lot.
You get that, Scott?
The West End.
The
oh,
one up by the athletic field.
Okay, the new one. The new-
140.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. When it said Hastings High School parking lot, I'm like, well, hold
No,
on.
it's
A
the
new
Dan
parking lot.
Cater
Yeah, this is
Memorial
the
Lot.
new one off of Featherstone Road
Yeah.
between General Sieben and Jacob Avenue that is going to provide access to the grass athletic fields west of
Correct.
the high school.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Well
Beautiful.
said.
Thank you. Okay, I feel much better about this now. Thank you.
Yeah, it was just labeled parking lot in the agenda, but in the recommendation, I've dialed it into the Hastings High School athletic field parking lot. And that is the new one recommended by the facilities committee.
I would just like to drip that I think we should name it the Dan Cater Memorial Parking Lot.
What is he gone? Why is it a memorial?
Well, okay,
Can some
maybe not
take it
memorial.
out?
Let's
I
not
think
get
he's
too
still-
generous
he's still
with
the
that.
proponent.
Dan, gone but not forgotten. What is
He's
up with
gone but
that?
not forgotten.
Oh,
But first we have to do the Pinecrest thing.
yep. Okay, so do we have a motion to accept the bids with the alternates for, we can do both Pinecrests at once, both of these.
So move.
Second,
Do we have any discussion? All right, all those
would-
in favor, say aye.
just
Oh,
just one discussion item, and that was on the Pinecrest roof. I was a little bit concerned when I saw the disparity in the bids. So this one has me a little bit nervous. When I see bids that are almost double the bid that we're getting, maybe they're just super busy and weren't overly interested in the business, but got me a little,
Look twice at that one.
yeah, it made me raise an eyebrow.
So you don't want to see it leaking in a year, is what you're saying.
I want to make sure it's done. I want to make sure we don't have overruns. I don't want to have it leak, and I want, if there's going to be a problem, I want the people to come back and fix it.
Oh,
So demanding.
I know I'm picky.
So I think you're right, Scott. This was vetted by Wold, so
Yep.
your confidence should be determined in your confidence in them because, but I think you're right about who's looking for a project
Right.
and who's just throwing out a flyer is like, yeah, we'll round up some people if you pay us more.
Right.
But there was no hesitation on Wold in recommending this. So that's your litmus test is how much confidence you have them in
Well-
vetting out your acceptable bids, qualifying bids.
Right. Yep. And I do have confidence in them. So
okay. Any other discussion then? All those in favor of accepting the Pinecrest bid, say aye.
I
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. So moving on, we're looking at accepting the low bid for the Hastings High School athletic field parking lot.
so moved.
All right, is there any discussion?
Just I'm not
All right.
naming it after Cater. That's all. there is to-
No?
I am sure Dan is alive and kicking.
I'm sure he is. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, next up, modification of student handbooks regarding grading.
And so
So,
if you look at the recommendation, which hopefully you're seeing right there, it explains what that's all about. And we talked about it at the work session. So unless you have questions, the motion's kind of spelled out for you there. And this was just updated again today. So there's been steady input from all the sites within the leadership team to dial it into what works at their 3 developmental levels. Modification through the end of this school year
Okay.
only.
Yeah, that was my question, was just that we're clear that this is only through the end of the 2019-20 school year.
Can't say there won't be things in the next year, but that'll be a new handbook that you approve probably in August.
Yeah, and this one, none of this really will fit because this is all about mid-quarter and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I know we talked about this last week at the work session, but
Yeah, just one comment
Mhm.
before. I'll make my comment after I'll make the motion that we move forward with this, please.
Second.
all right, is there any other discussion on this?
Just one thing. I've seen enough on social media to see other districts that are approaching this in a different manner to make me really appreciate the flexibility, the compassion, the logic, and just the do no harm mentality that Hastings has going into this. This is, I feel very strongly, this is the right way to go.
You know what,
Because there
Scott,
are
I'm glad you said that because I 100% agree with you, and I am I'm publicly very disappointed in some of the other school districts. I'll be honest. I think we are
Yeah.
doing it the right way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we are too, and I think it recognizes and acknowledges the different situations that families in our district may find themselves in. Not only socioeconomic, but with differences in how students learn, differences in impact of COVID-19 on a given family. It just, this is the right way to go. So
I did
Yep.
mention this in the working session, but I want to mention it again. I want to be sure that we as a district make sure that we're engaging our counselors and make sure that we're very clear in our communication to parents that they should be sitting down with their children and with their counselors and making a determination that is in the best interest for their child in terms of which direction they go. That needs to be a very full-headed conversation with everybody involved.
But I will agree with Scott. With both of you. One, that we should have those conversations, but I really appreciate the flexibility that they're giving to students and families regarding grading. And I think that that's really important that we're giving them those options. So.
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Next up is the meal prices for the 2020-2021. It's a lot of 20s school year. And so we had just briefly mentioned this earlier. It would be the increase of the 5 cents.
I'll make the motion to approve the school breakfast, lunch, and milk prices for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Carries. Next up, the resolution relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of the probationary teachers.
And I was just sending Trent a message to make sure he knows the timing on how far we're progressing here. So This item, if you recall, last meeting, we did the non-renew of any probationary staff that was recommended by administrators. Since the finance committee meeting, where Mr. Kovach and Mr. Johnson, I got some feedback that they most likely were going to need to complete their master schedule with the right sizing FTE that has been assigned to them. And Steve Kovach's request was an extra 0.2 FTE to try to make his master schedule work a little bit better, knowing that the recommendation was going to be that he wouldn't get that until potentially verifying the need in the fall with actual students. He's going back and using the potential that he has through June 30th to non-renew any probationary staff or to reduce probationary staff. So so that's why this one is apart from the others that we did last month. And he's reducing one of his staff people by 0.2 to get within his FTE that he's been allotted.
Question, just how this reads. Is it reducing them 0.2 or is it reducing them 0.8 to 0.2?
It's reducing them 0.2.
Okay.
And they are also getting tomorrow they will get a letter that specifies that
Okay.
in writing that the board took that action. It's already been previewed with the person. And I did go through it with the Teachers Association to make sure that they were aware, so that the teacher would understand that it is not it's not reflective of their performance. It's the principal trying to get the master schedule done in the FTE that's been allotted to him.
Right.
And we can do this through June 30th. Hopefully we've got them all, but there could still, I guess, be the potential that an administrator would come back with another one. We aren't able to do this any longer. We're past the deadline for any reduction for a continuing contract teacher. So the only option right now is probationary teachers.
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't believe we have a motion in a second for this one yet.
I'll do that.
Oh,
So-
right.
We need to introduce the resolution.
That's because we need to do this differently.
Yeah. All right. Brace yourselves. It's not as long as the last one.
Check for spiders before you begin.
That spider is dead now. I introduce the following resolution and move for its adoption. The resolution relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of probationary teachers, whereas Sarah Wagner, a probationary teacher of Independent School District 200, be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 200 that pursuant to Minnesota Statute 122A.40 subdivision 5, that the teacher contract of Sarah Wagner, the middle school, be reduced 0.2 of 1 FTE. Probationary teacher in Independent School District 200 is hereby reduced at the close of the current 2019-2020 school year as identified above. Be it further resolved that written notice be sent to said teacher regarding termination or non-renewal of their contract as provided by law, and that said notice shall be in substantially the following form.
All you just need to do a roll call vote.
Yep. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. And we'll do roll call. Becky Beisel.
Yes.
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 Lisa Hedin.
Yes.
Scott Gergen.
Yes.
Stephanie Malm. Yes. Dave Pemble.
Yes.
Kelsey Waits.
Yes. Okay. Proposal to increase high school student participation fees. Did Trent end up hopping on? See him in here.
I do not see him on the participants list.
So I'm going to just reground you in the work session that we had here recently. My understanding was that most likely you would want to talk about this and that you were looking at the recommendation from the business director for how to proceed. And you had the background from recommendations from Trent Hansen as well. There's a document, either Trent's information or the business office recommendation. Those were in the last work session. If you need to reflect, go back and language from any of them. And we could probably share a screen too if anybody wants one of those brought back up. We also have attached here. Yeah, we have both of them attached again in the board book right now. So that's the activities director and the business office recommendations.
Can I make a motion at this time? Or do we want to wait for Trent? Did you hear back from him, Jeff?
I didn't get anything back from, I was understanding that he was going to be available. He got tied up in something else, or maybe he thought that he's said all he needs to say on it, but I didn't hear anything back from him here just now.
I also texted him and haven't heard back.
Okay. Because I would make a motion to adopt athletic activity fees for the 2021 school year, using a tiered approach of $175 at tier 1, $200 at tier 2, $265 at tier 3. The tiers are as identified in our finance officer's document, and that athletic fees would be reviewed on an annual basis going forward.
I'd second that.
I would second that. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any discussion? No, we talked about this a lot, and that also talking about making the cap.
Oh, shoot.
The cap also set based on the cost of the low tier.
Right. So, from a parliamentary process, I don't know how to do that. I can amend my motion, or can I do? Or somebody can make.
Why don't you amend your motion, Lisa, and I'll just second it.
Okay. So I would amend my motion to include that individual max would be 3 times tier 1, and family max would be 4 times tier 1.
Second.
All right. So since, this is another question about parliamentary procedure. So since Lisa made the original motion and the amendment, do we still have to vote on the amendment first and then the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Have any discussion? So a motion to approve the amendment that is setting the individual cap at 3 times tier 1 and the family cap at 4 times tier 1. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is approving the activities fee increase with our amendment. So any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mhm.
If we're not going to get Trent back in, I don't want to leave that policy thing hanging if we don't need to. I mean, I would feel comfortable asking to bring that off the table for a motion under its current language. And then if we have to modify it after talking with Trent, we will. I'm going to presume he looked at that closely going in. That's a very poorly worded action item, but that would be my intent, is to bring policy 710A off the table for action as it's written, with that one modification Scott found.
You can just table it, Lisa.
I want to untable it. Want to take
Mhm.
action on it.
Oh, you do want to
If
take
we want to
action
modify
tonight?
if he's got to modify the parent handbook and
Yep,
get stuff
so
out,
you just
I'm
need a
comfortable
second.
either way, and I'd rather it didn't sit for another month.
Right. And he worked closely in writing up this policy. And so,
Why don't we get a second and a vote, and then we can talk about it to get it back on the action list,
Second,
to remove it from the table, okay?
any discussion about removing it from the table? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
I,
aye.
Opposed, same sign. And carries. So,
Maybe you want a motion to approve it and then a second and then discussion.
okay. Is there a motion to approve 710A?
So moved.
so move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay, and I'll go back to my recommendation is, based on the timeline, is to approve 710A. A lot of work went into getting this from nothing to something that's very close. And this would allow the activities department to proceed with getting things ready for next year. We can communicate with Trent here during the week, during the workday this week, get that information out to all the board directors, see if there's any concerns as to that, final language. And then you could formally approve if there is anything that's revision that is substantial, you can vote on it again soon, being on another version, but at least he's able to get going. And unless there are major reservations with anything in this version, he can get to the point of near completion on this. The goal was to have it in June. June 25th might be holding him up a little bit. So I think we can get this resolved so he can proceed, and then you can do another formal approval of any revisions in one read in June.
That's the way to go.
Any other discussion on this policy? So with that, all those in favor of adopting policy 710A, say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So then last up is the talking about the high school graduation procession. And typically the board does not weigh in on high school graduation, and we do not have to approve this. However, given the current situation we're in with the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a resolution to show support for the plan that has been developed. Oh, is there a motion to approve?
so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in, oh, Jeff?
I was just going to say, this is symbolic and it's unusual. So I guess right now you're just, the way you have it framed right now is you're approving what Mike has presented to you as, and taking a vote to support it. Another way would be to do a resolution of support and have a roll call vote. Either way gets you there, because there's no way to define this. Either one is a show of support, and it will show which board directors supported the plan. Either way, there's a record of that.
I think we just go with a roll call vote. We got it covered.
Discussion? Becky
All right.
Beisel?
Yes.
Brian Davis? Lisa Hedin?
Yes.
Scott Gergen?
Yes.
Stephanie Malm, yes. Dave Pemble?
Yes,
Kelsey Waits?
Yes. All right, that brings us to the end of our action items. So our future board meetings, if you go on, we have 3 committee meetings set up in even before the 1st of June or by the 1st of June. And then our regular board work session will take place on June 10th and the regular board meeting will take place on June 24th.
Can
Lisa?
I just ask which negotiation committee is this?
Oh,
Principal.
admin.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't supposed to be there.
You are not.
Good, because I don't have it on my calendar.
Becky?
Maybe missing from the June 24th meeting. That's my 40th birthday, so I might miss out on that if that's okay.
You don't want to spend it with us.
I mean, no offense, but I
Unbelievable.
just don't know what my family has planned. But if I check in, and I may be there if I need to vote for something.
We might be a better offer.
Okay,
Hard to say.
You might be safer with us.
I know, right?
Becky, look at these faces. Come on.
It's great. I am telling you.
Okay. So,
Probably the only other thing is a reminder that all those meetings will be Zoom meetings.
foreseeable future, I think that's just assumed at this point. Okay. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? All right. So I don't think we actually have to take a vote on that. So 8:13, the meeting is adjourned. All right.
Thanks.